April by Sarah Teasdale. The roofs are shining from the rain, the sparrows twitter as they fly, and with a windy April grace the little clouds go by. Yet the backyards are bare and brown, with only one unchanging tree. I could not be so sure of spring, save that it sings in me. The end. Music by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Let me go where'er I will, I hear a sky-born music still. It sounds from all things old, it sounds from all things young. From all that's fair, from all that's foul, peals out a cheerful song. It is not only in the rose, it is not only in the bird, not only where the rainbow glows, nor in the song of woman heard, but in the darkest, meanest things. There always, always something sings. 'Tis not in the high stars alone, nor in the cup of budding flowers, nor in the redbreast's mellow tone, nor in the bow that smiles in showers, but in the mud and scum of things. There always, always something sings. The end. Chrisley's Trees by Mabel Dunham. Chapter 1. This story is about Chrisley Eby, a little Mennonite boy with blue eyes and copper-colored hair. He was only 6 years old when he went to bed one evening in May. He slept all through the night and nothing happened. But in the morning when he opened his eyes, he was 7. Yes, he was 7 years old. "Didn't you come awake yet, Chrisley?" Mommy called up the stairs. Chrisley rubbed his eyes and looked around the room. "What time is it?" he called. "Time you are up," Mommy told him. "The sun is up long already, and it's your birthday." Sure enough, it was his birthday. "Now I am 7, he said to himself, "but I don't feel any different to yesterday. I'm older than Huntley." That's his dog. "I'm older than Humley, too." That's his pet calf. "I'm even older than Hutchley, and look how big he is already." Hutchley is his colt. Chrisley yawned and stretched himself. Then he jumped out of bed. For a moment he stood on the plain homemade mat that Mommy had put in front of his bed for him to kneel on when he said his prayers. It was a very, very plain, dark mat in the hit and miss pattern. Chrisley often wished that Mommy would give him one of the kind she made for city folk, with red roses and purple violets. He was so fond of flowers and colors. The floor was painted a bright yellow, and in the morning sunlight it shone like glittering gold. A gentle wind flapped the white linen blind against the window pane. Outside, the robins flitted from branch to branch in the chestnut tree. "Cheer up, Chrisley," they twittered. "Cheer up." Chrisley dressed as quickly as he could and hurried down to breakfast. Huntley heard him on the stair. "Ruff, ruff," he barked. That meant, "Good morning to you, Chrisley." Huntley loves Chrisley better than anyone else in all the world. He understands him, too, even when Chrisley talks to him in his Pennsylvania Dutch language. Chrisley understands Huntley, too, when he says, "Boo-hoo!" The meal was nearly over when Chrisley came into the kitchen. In his big armchair at the head of the table sat Dottie, eating sausages and fried potatoes. Mommy sat at his right hand, eating the same. Big sister Samantha was at the other end of the table near the stove. Behind her was the corner cupboard filled with old-fashioned blue dishes that came from Pennsylvania many years ago. Little sister Lavina sat between Samantha and Mommy. Chrisley slid into his place on a bench along the wall, opposite Lavina, and Huntley came and lay at his feet. Dottie looked at the latecomer over his spectacles. "What makes you so late, Chrisley?" he said. Chrisley hung his head. I didn't come awake," he answered. "He stood up as soon as I called him," said Mommy. "You don't have to wait till somebody calls you," said Dottie. "Nobody has to call the sun." "He's just a little boy," said Lavina. She smiled at Chrisley across the table. "He's 7 years old now," said Dottie, "old enough to get his chores done before breakfast." "You don't have to call me tomorrow morning," said Chrisley. Dottie patted him on the head. "You'll make a good farmer yet," he said. Then he pushed back his chair, put on his hat and overalls, and went to work. Chrisley went to the stable and did his chores. Then it was time to go to school. He threw his school bag over his shoulder and started down the lane. Huntley was at his heels. "Look out for the cars, Chrisley," Mummy called after him. "Yes, Mummy." "Walk on the wrong side of the road so they don't hit you from behind." "Yes, Mummy." "And send Huntley back till you come to the gate." "Yes, Mummy." Chrisley was as happy as he could be walking along the road to the schoolhouse. He listened to the chirping of the birds and tried to chirp like them. Then he forgot about the birds and tried to catch up to his own shadow. That was a lot of fun. Once in a while he looked through the branches of the trees and caught glimpses of the beautiful Conestoga River, which winds like a silver ribbon of water around his father's farm. Chrisley loves the Conestoga River. He loves it most of all in the summertime when he can wade in it and catch minnows and gather smooth stones and clamshells. Its gurgling water makes the sweetest music Chrisley has ever heard. But he loves it in the wintertime too, when the water is covered with huge cakes of ice and the banks are white with snow. Then Chrisley gets out his sled. He ties a warm scarf over his ears and around his neck, and he calls Huntley. Away they go sleigh riding. Chrisley gives himself a good push away at the top of one bank, and before he knows it, he and Huntley are bumping up against the shore across the river. Huntley jumps off first. "What fun!" he barks. "Boo-hoo!" That's why Chrisley loves the Conestoga River. He loves it better than anything, except Huntley. Chapter 2. Chrisley was nearly late for school the morning of his birthday. He sneaked into the lines at the very last minute. Teacher saw him do it. "Why are you so late this morning, Chrisley?" she asked. "I didn't stand early enough up," said the little boy. "Too bad to be late on your birthday," said the teacher. Chrisley did not know what to say to that, so he stuck his finger in his mouth and sucked it for a while. The reading lesson was hard that day, but Chrisley kept his place, towing the line of brass tacks at the head of the class. Teacher said she was proud of him. She called all the children to the front and told them to form a circle and help them sing. "Happy birthday to you! Happy birthday to you! Happy birthday, dear Chrisley! Happy birthday to you!" Chrisley liked that, but he did not like it so well when a dozen big boys caught him at recess time and gave him 9 slaps on his back. 7 for his birthday, they said, 1 to keep him well, and 1 to make him a good boy. There was a birthday party for Chrisley that evening at home. When supper was over and the clock had struck 7, Dotty put on his cap and said, "Fetch a pail, Chrisley, and come with me to the flats." "Another tree for your birthday," said Lavina. "Quick, here's a nice little pail for a nice little boy." She pinched his cheeks as she pushed him out the door. "Plant it good," she called to him through the kitchen window. Samantha's face was like a dark cloud. "What are you staring at, Lavina?" she said. "At Chrisley. I wished he could always be like he is now." "I think he's awful small for 7 years old already," said Samantha. "You spoil him, Lavina." "Well, anyways, you don't." Lavina still stood at the window watching her little brother as he trudged along, trying to keep up to Dotty. Down the lane they went, and through the gate, and across the road, and over the fence to the flats. Chrisley carried his pail in one hand. In the other, he held a bundle of pointed sticks pressed against his little body. Dotty had a young maple tree under his arm, and over his shoulder he carried a spade. Huntley had started off with them, but soon he was away on ahead. Then he came rushing back. He wagged his tail and jumped up on Chrisley with such force that he nearly knocked him down. Huntley knew that this was a great day for Chrisley, his birthday. He knew, too, that they were going, all 3 of them, down to the flats to plant a birthday tree for Chrisley. Dotty went and stood in a grove of 7 young maples on the bank of the river. These were Chrisley's trees. Dotty had planted the largest one on the day when Chrisley was born, and every year after that, on his birthday, he had planted another. It seemed to Dotty that the Conestoga had never looked so beautiful as it did that evening. At 7 o'clock, the water was still dancing and sparkling in the sunshine. It was so low that Chrisley could have rolled up his trousers and crossed over barefoot to the other side. Chrisley's tree stood scarcely a stone's throw from the water. Dotty chose the spot for the new planting, dug a hole, and pushed the sapling into it. Chrisley held it while Dotty spaded the earth in and tramped it down. "Now fetch me a pail of water," he told Chrisley. Chrisley and Huntley went down to the creek and dipped the pail into the water, but when they brought it to Dotty, they had spilled half of it over Chrisley's boots. "Get another pailful." Dotty felt like scolding him, but remembered it was his birthday. "And don't slop so much." This time Chrisley didn't spill any. Dotty poured the water over the roots of the little tree he had just planted. "That's all for today," he said, as he brushed the earth from his overalls. "But every day for a week, unless it gives a good rain, you must water your new tree, Chrisley. Do it after school or after supper. It soaks in best then. Now we'll put the frame around it." "What for do we do that, Dotty?" "To keep the cows off when they come to pasture." Dotty finished the frame, hoisted the spade over his shoulder, and started off to the house. "When the leaves come out, Chrisley," he said, "you must watch for caterpillars. If you don't, they will come and build a nest in one of the branches. They'll eat off all the green leaves." "What must I do then, Dotty?" "Come and tell me as soon as you see the nest," said Dotty. "I'll burn the caterpillars. Maybe I'll have to burn the branch too. Taking care of a tree, Chrisley, is like bringing up a little boy. You must give it lots to eat and plenty to drink, and you must watch that nothing hurts it." "Mumps and whooping cough hurt little boys, don't they, Dotty?" "Yes, them both." "Lying and stealing hurt them too, Mommy said." "Yes, them too," said Dotty. "Mumps and whooping cough you might get, but lying and stealing you wouldn't do, Chrisley." "No," said Chrisley solemnly, "them things I don't do." "How many trees have you now, Chrisley?" "8, and they're all my very own, ain't they, Dotty?" "Yes, Chrisley, they are all yours. Some day I will be too old to work. Then the farm will be yours. I'm trying to make it a good farm and a beautiful one, so you will not want to run away to the city." "Like Pete and Danny?" "Yes. You'll stop with me to home, not, Chrisley?" "Always I will stop with you, Dotty." "There's something I have noticed about trees, Chrisley. Their roots grow deeper and stronger every year." "Do they, Dotty?" "Yes. Little boys have roots too." "On their feet, Dotty!" Chrisley laughed so hard that Huntley whisked his tail and laughed too. "Ruff, ruff!" "Ah, not on your feet," said Dotty. "You will never see them, but you will feel them." "How can I feel them?" "They will grow around your heart." Chrisley thought that was a queer thing for Dotty to say. "Just think on it," said Dotty. "Some day you'll know what I mean." "Ruff, ruff!" barked Huntley. "I know about it now. What Dotty says is as true as true. Ruff, ruff!" By this time they were at the kitchen door. Wild Beasts by Eveline Stein. I will be a lion, and you shall be a bear, and each of us will have a den beneath a nursery chair. And you must growl and growl and growl, and I will roar and roar, and then, why then, you'll growl again, and I will roar some more. The end. The Weathers by Thomas Hardy. This is the weather the cuckoo likes, and so do I. When showers betumble the chestnut spikes, and nestlings fly, and the little brown nightingale bills her best, and they sit outside at the traveller's rest, and maids come forth spring muslin dressed, and citizens dream of the south and west, and so do I. This is the weather the shepherd shuns, and so do I, when beeches drip in browns and duns, and thresh and ply, and hill-hide tides throb, throw on throw, and meadow rivulets overflow, and drops on gate bars hang in a row, and rooks in families homeward go, and so do I. The end.